Time for another edition of the Improbability Engine After Show, and today we talk about horror movies, and I'm going to let Joe start.
You know, Will, whenever you're talking about horror movies, the one thing that kind of steps out in my mind is the difference between a suspense, horror, and a thriller.
Okay.
So I tried to go horror, and that means that there's gore, and there's a little bit of, cringe-worthy stuff that makes your stomach kind of uneasy, special effects kind of thing.
Okay.
Whereas suspense and thriller can be more psychological, and you can still be scary, but that's where my mind was. So this is my list, and it's not inclusive. So if you have your suggestions, let us know. Hit me up at RacerJoeD on Twitter, and we'll talk about it. Okay, my number one, the oldest on my list, Nosferatu from 1922. Max Schreck is this Dracula ripoff that once it came out, the Bram Stoker estate sued them and they went out of business. But what you're left with is this first vampire movie that wasn't Dracula. And so you've got massive amounts of, and it's just a scary, dark, well-shot German expressionist movie. You get a chance, watch Nosferatu.
I've seen it. I don't like silent movies. Moving right along.
So you just immediately eliminate it. All right. Don't like silent movies. Mark that one off the list. What's yours?
My favorite of all time?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to mention two.
Okay.
My two favorites. And if you want to do your second favorite before I do that.
Oh, okay. Well, when we talk about horror movies, I think you'd be remiss if you didn't mention The Exorcist.
Yes.
The Exorcist is an abrasive affront to all of your senses. I can only imagine what it was like when it opened in the movie theaters and people ran out screaming and crying and fainting in the hallways. What a fantastic movie. To see a young girl have her head spin around backwards and she projectile vomits all over a priest, you just can't go. That's about as good as it gets for a horror movie.
I went to see that when I was 15 with a friend of mine, his little sister, and their mom.
Perfect combination of people.
And it was, as you say, horrifying. Every time the camera would pan to the doorway to that girl's room, my hand would go up to my eyes so that I could be ready to hide my eyes. And there are great lines in that.
The power of Christ compels you. The power of Christ compels.
Which I riff on that during football games. The power of fourth down compels you. And then, and I used this when I had to be at Rupp Arena, standing there at Rupp Arena in, Wildcat heaven, which for a Louisville fan is hell. And I go, it burns, it burns.
You know what? That movie that's a great combination movie because it is both a thriller and suspense. There's as much emotional and mental turmoil as there is gore and just horrible, nasty stuff. But fantastic movie. Has to be amongst the list of the best horror movies of all time.
But my two favorite, number one is Let the Right One In / Let Me In. The first one, Let the Right One In, it's a Swedish language film. The second one, Let Me In.
You don't like silent movies, but Swedish language films are good.
Yeah, that's fine. Let Me In was the English remake of it that came out, 3 or 4 years later, and it's virtually identical to the original.
Except it's in English.
So
is the American version better, worse, just as good?
I would say that they are just as good.
Okay, well that's good.
The story is about a couple of preteens. One of them is a girl. She's like 12. She might be 13 years old. She's a vampire. And then it's this boy who has a crush on her. And early on, there's this scene where he says to her, "Are you a vampire?" And she says, "Would you like me anyway?" So it's kind of a preteen love story / vampire movie. There is
so basically it's Twilight.
But there are some crazy, scary scenes in it.
So it's completely not like Twilight.
And the thing that you get in the second one that you do not get in the first one is toward the end. And see, there's an old man who takes care of her in the movie, okay? Toward the end, the second one makes it clear that the little boy, he's going to be her new caretaker for the next, 50 or 60 years.
Right.
And it's just a terrific movie, in my opinion. And then the other one, gosh, I love this movie, The Cabin in the Woods, by Joss Whedon. You go in,
Firefly of horror movies.
You go in thinking it's going to be a regular horror movie, and these people go to a cabin, and bad things are about to happen, and then suddenly they show a control room somewhere.
Yep.
And there are these people in the control room that are watching on video what's happening at the cabin in the woods. And they're behind it all. And what's really going on is they have several sites all around the world where they're trying to put people in frightening situations where somebody gets killed to offer as a sacrifice to the ancient gods. And things start to go wrong. Nobody's getting killed. And there's this one scene in Japan where this ghost is supposed to kill some children and fails, and the guy in the control room goes, "How hard is it to kill 9-year-olds?"
It's funny that horror movies often are used to cast a light in a strange or satirical way on reality. What you're telling me here is this is a really it's an indictment on the media culture of the world right now. I mean, how tied in we are on that. So that's a very cool spot to be in. I'm gonna have to check that one out. Okay. Speaking of social commentary, Night of the Living Dead, 1968.
Oh, I love that movie.
That is so.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Such a good movie, and we talk about how movies can be used for social commentary. And anybody who's watched, there's a spoiler coming, so just give me 30 seconds if you haven't seen it. If you haven't seen it, really, kind of punch yourself in the face and then give me 30 seconds. When they survive and they come down and the girl comes down, this white girl comes down, and then here comes a black man who comes down and the police shoot him. To me, in 1968, it's the utmost social commentary you can make, and it's done almost flippantly. It's done not important at all, and I look at that movie. Not only does it really introduce the zombie genre to the United States again, it absolutely comes about as a perfect reflection of social commentary of its time. And honestly, that's all you can ask for. It's gory, it's scary, it's adventure. There's something going on. There's storylines that make you uncomfortable. Oh, and then there's social commentary. Very cool.
The movie Carrie, I have to mention that. I always took girls to scary movies.
Well, of course you did.
And so my friend Tammy and I went to see this when she was 16, 17. Anyway, we went to see Carrie, and the last time I saw her, a few months before she passed away, I brought that movie up, and she grinned, and she shook her head, and she said, "I still can't believe I let you talk me into going to see that movie." There is, and I'm not going to ruin it for anybody, go see the original. Don't see the remake.
Oh, don't watch any remakes. They're terrible.
At the end of that movie, there's a really scared you moment that makes the whole thing. Oh, and they've made a musical of Carrie.
Of course they.
Now, unfortunately, from what I've read, they did not make it campy enough. It should be campy. And in my mind, if I was doing a musical of Carrie, the scene at the prom where they pour blood onto her and she's about to just use her telekinetic powers to kill people, at that moment when the blood goes onto her, they should play "There's Power in the Blood, Power in the Blood."
Oh, what a good movie! And that's actually a Stephen King book.
Yes.
That was remade very, very well. And what you'll find in a lot of those Stephen King remakes is sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. He's a fantastic author. If anybody hasn't read him, read him. But that leads directly into my next one, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining from 1980. Now, this is a very interesting movie because Kubrick is a mad genius as it comes to movie making. This remake was actually panned by the author. Stephen King said he hates it. He said he ruined the story. But there are a small but devoted group of Kubrick fanatics who see some conspiracy theories in the production of The Shining. There's actually a Netflix documentary. It's a documentary on Netflix currently that looks at Kubrick's career and focuses on the production of The Shining and finds coincidences that they try to explain away. But a fantastic movie. Again, pop culture references galore. Here's Johnny. You get that. You get the wall of blood. The wall of blood that just comes rushing down the hallway and out of the elevator. The two little girls.
I had a real life experience that reminded me of the two little girls.
Oh God!
At KFC here in Murray. So I go into KFC.
Oh God!
This is back
absurdity. It's just there. Okay,
back before it closed. I go into KFC and I'm trying to get waited on, and nobody's paying any attention to me. And so suddenly I get some attention, and these two girls come out. And they start talking simultaneously. And one of them has red curly hair. It looks like a doll's head or something. And they're talking simultaneously, saying the exact same words. And it's just freaking me out, man. And then, of course, they had no chicken.
Well, of course, because that was the Murray, Kentucky Fried Chicken. Kentucky Fried, well, we don't have any chicken right now. It'll be 20 minutes before you have chicken. So my next movie, right, no, it's your turn. Your turn.
You go.
Okay, my next movie, The Omen.
I remember that.
The Omen. I first saw this movie when I was like 8 years old.
Good for you.
Mistake. It was a mistake. That was the scariest movie I had ever seen in my life. I was terrified. I couldn't sleep. It had come on HBO at my cousin's house because they had HBO. We watched The Omen, and it was terrifying. Anybody who doesn't know, it's about an ambassador and his wife who can't have children or don't have children. They go to a Catholic orphanage in Italy, and they adopt a baby. What they don't know is that baby has been marked as the Antichrist, which is frightening. And you see all these things kind of come together where evil kind of flocks to him and bad things happen to people. And Damien's the child. It's really, really, it's a frightening movie that, somebody falls off a building and it's impaled on a fence. It's just crazy. There's crazy stuff going on.
It reminds me of the story when I was a kid. My mom told me that about the movie The Fly.
Yes.
Okay, and
like the Vincent Price version.
Yeah, the old black and white version. The old black and white version. And there's a point at the end where the guy's turned into a fly.
Help me,
okay.
Help
yes.
me.
And my mom said that scares your daddy to death. And that scene. And so I would go up behind him and go, help me, help me.
where the fly with the Vincent Price's head is on the spider web and the spider's creeping.
Yeah.
Help me, help me. Oh my gosh, that's a terrifying movie. That's a good one.
There were some really good old black and white movies that were horror films.
Absolutely.
I think Psycho would qualify, although you could argue it's more suspense than horror.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's one of those where you take the master of suspense and you just say, okay, push the envelope just a little bit. And you go from, Alfred Hitchcock was the master of suspense. In the 1950s, you couldn't get horror movies made on a big budget unless you called them thrillers or suspense, and it was Alfred Hitchcock. So when Zygo came out, that's just a fantastic movie.
And then there's Alien and Aliens. I love those movies. I love
Game
those
over,
movies.
Man. Game over.
Yeah. Their spaceship has been destroyed. They can't escape, and he's like, what the are we going to do now? It's game over, man. Game over. I love that. I love the scene with the little girl where
and now we return to our regularly scheduled program.
I forgot what I was talking about.
The little girl.
The little girl.
I don't know. You were talking about it. That's all you got out. All right. Well, I'll go with my next
little girl. Let's see. Can we pause this? Then there's the scene in Aliens where the little girl says, "It's night now." That's when they come out mostly, and
It's so good. It's so good. You know what? There's so much in that that's really good. The best reason to put Alien or Aliens in your list is they were spoofed in the movie Spaceballs. I don't know if you've seen the movie Spaceballs. It's a Mel Brooks movie. Basically, you can't be a cultural phenomenon if you're not in a Mel Brooks movie. That's just how that works. There's some others, but that's how you got to do it. So in this one, he's at a diner in space, and somebody orders a special, eats it, and he goes, "Oh, my stomach hurts." And all of a sudden, he lays down, and an alien pops out. And instead of it being this vicious killer, he takes out a cane and top hat and sings, "Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. Hello, my ragtime girl," and runs off. So anyway, Aliens on the list. The last one that I've got. Now, this is not comprehensive, but you got to tip your hat to anything nowadays that kind of follows the old model. I mean, we looked at Night of the Living Dead. That was a low-budget movie that was done that went on to be a cultural phenomenon. The last one on my list, Saw.
I haven't seen that.
It is... Let's put it to you like this. It was originally done as a short to try to sell it. The writer and director and actors kind of worked together to make this. It went from having no budget to having a $1.2 million budget, which by Hollywood standards is
nothing.
I mean, that's a pittance. You can't get cameras for that much money. But it stars Carrie Ells and Danny Glover, who were pitched this movie, and they saw the short, they saw the script, and were like, I got to be a part of that. Fantastic movie. It has gone on since that $1.2 million budget to generate $900 million in revenue from Saw 1 through 6 or 7 to Saw video games, all kinds of stuff that happened. But the best is Saw 1. Although, honestly, it's like any other sequel. You can go through and pick some that are really, really good. It does not sacrifice story. The story is what keeps you going in it. To just give you the brief intro to the first movie, two guys are in an empty bathroom with a dead body. They're handcuffed to pipes, one by the arm, one by the leg. There are two hacksaw blades in the room, and they have to escape. It's a game. So if you get a chance to watch Saw, don't do it when it's dark outside. Don't do it whenever you're feeling skittish. Go in there and watch it in the middle of the day, and don't be afraid to pause it if it gets too intense. Saw was a fantastic movie, one that's culturally has been impactful. In one of the sequels, a girl who had been strung out on heroin has to find a key, and it's in a pit that's 10 feet down that's full of used hypodermic needles. So she has to jump into this pit, dig through to find a key. Horrifying concepts, but well done, fantastically presented. Might be one of the most perfect series of horror movies because it doesn't sacrifice story for cheap scares. That's a big deal for me.
And then,
oh no,
the strangest horror movie, if you can call it that I've ever seen, because it's a comedy, and part of it is like the writer was on LSD. The 30-Foot Bride of Candy Rock with Bud Abbott and Lou Costello.
Is that a horror movie?
Well, if you like really good movies, yes, because it's not a really good movie and it would horrify you. But I'm going to throw it out there just because there's so many really strange things that happen in that movie, and I'm not even going to tell you what they are.
Well, and I grew up in a time where watching video rental was huge.
Right.
So in town there was a place where you could rent 5 older movies for 5 days for $5. I could afford that. So when I was a kid, we'd rent a lot of really bad, well, not always bad, low budget, no budget movies, stuff that you hear about or stuff that you see. Yeah.
We can't close without talking about the Blair Witch Project.
Blair Witch Project was socially a phenomenon.
I love that movie. And I know a lot of people were disappointed by the ending of that movie. Too bad. That's just too bad. I love that movie.
Rocks.
There are 2 great scenes in that movie. At the beginning, the girl, who's one of the cinematographers, is talking to one of the guys, and he has his shirt off, and she's making fun of the hair on his chest, and she says, "That looks like Afghanistan." And that's great. But the best scene in the whole movie, they've already been terrified, okay?
Is it the one where it's shooting up?
No. The best scene, they've already been terrorized, okay? And they're scared to death, but they're walking along, and they've gotten some camaraderie going, and they're laughing and cutting up. And so this one guy thinks that it's a good time that maybe now he can tell them that he threw the map away. And so he's like, yeah, that stupid map, I threw it in the river. And then he quickly realizes his mistake because they could have killed him.
There's no good time to tell people you've thrown the map away. That's just the first thing that I know. No, if you look at those old campy movies, this is a movie that we talk about has social significance and has things that you look at that kind of echo on past the movie itself. I was thinking about the shot where she's crying and all you see is half of her face and tears are falling onto the camera. That was something that has been kind of vamped on for years now. But those older bad movies, the low-budget horror movies from the 70s and 80s, you got ones like Critters, Killer Tomatoes from Outer Space, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. What was another one? You can't talk about this without talking about, oh my God, what the hell? Names just went completely blank.
Say something about it.
Oh, can't get him wet. Can't feed him past 8 o'clock.
Gremlins?
Gremlins, yes. Gremlins. The Gremlins was a fantastic, because it's funny.
It was.
It's funny. It's really humorous. Whenever this happens, Gremlins, they do stuff. It's funny.
And then the romance horror genre, Warm Bodies. My wife and I went to see that. I think we're the only people over the age of 20 in the whole theater.
And if you want to get into that area, you get into like stuff like American Werewolf in London.
Oh my! When my daughter was little, I'm watching that movie, and she's like an infant, and she's sitting on my lap chewing on my thumb while I'm watching that movie. And my wife walks in and sees what's on the screen and says, what kind of movie is this? And grabs my daughter up out of my lap and goes running out of the room.
You know what? I'm not surprised. That's the kind of stuff that I could see you doing. But no, it's one of those movies that you watch and it's unique for its genre. I mean, it's a horror movie. It's grotesque and kind of nasty and introspective. A love story. So it's another good movie there. But that's all I got on my list. I mean,
all right.
You can look at thrillers like Session 9. That's one to watch if you're into that kind of thing. Guys are supposed to go and get the asbestos out of an old mental institution, and mayhem ensues. Fantastic movie, but not really a horror movie, more of a thriller. Lots of good stuff out there. Tell me what you think at Racer Joe D. Just let me know what's going on Twitter. I'll answer you.
That brings to a close this edition of the Improbability Engine.
Artie, what's happened? I'm so big. Well, stop staring and get me something to wear. Do you still love me?
From the tip of your toes to the top of your head. Giants! Giants!
Oh, Lord, get me there by sundown. And please, Lord, don't let the Pentagon find out about this.
Can't rule out invasion from space. All right. All orders top secret.
Little old me isn't too much woman for little old you, is she?
Lady, if you were triplets, you wouldn't know what too much woman is for little old me.
Jackie! You leave my husband alone! Ooh.
Flying saucers! Flying saucers! This is it! What?